Hello and welcome to the Love Your Life show. This week I have a special guest. She is another life coach, and I love bringing life coaches on the show because our conversations get to be so aligned and full of helpful tidbits for you, no matter how you identify, whether you're a mom, a dad, or whatever you are. This show is going to help you, and this interview is no different. Today on the show I have Sue Holt. She is a fellow podcast host of an awesome podcast, and I will put the links in this show notes at smbwell.com/243. She is a life coach for moms, a podcast host, a graduate student, a wife, a stay-at-home mom. She has 4 children, 3 boys and a girl, ages 17, 15, 14, and 10. Of course, she also has a dog. She has it all, and we dive into a really great conversation today on sort of the challenges of being a woman in this society, and sort of the martyrdom that maybe we have felt. And I think I'm going to title this podcast episode "How to Not Be a Martyr," because she has some awesome advice and tactical ways to get out of this feeling state that I know I have been in. We talk about the invisible workload. We talk about mom guilt. We talk about, ways to ease resentment in relationships. So listen in. She also runs, I will put all the links in the show notes because she has a great community called Mommy's Life Coach. And it's where she offers a reassuring space where you can share frustrations, seek peer support and resources, as well as strategies for successfully and happily navigating motherhood without losing yourself. I love it. She talks about putting the me back in mommy. So let's go dive into this conversation. And then please, after the show, make sure that you share this episode with another person who you think could benefit from some of the knowledge and golden nuggets that Sue and myself, Susie, drop today. And reach out to her and me on Instagram and let us know what your takeaways are. Thank you, Warrior. Big love to you. All right. Welcome, Sue. Thank you for coming to the Love Your Life show.
Hi. Thank you, Susie. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited to have you here. I know that I did your intro. I spoke about how you're a mommy life coach, and I just want to bring your message to my listeners, because many of my listeners are not parents yet, or about like some of my listeners are not parents, and yet we all were kids and we all, are people here in this sort of society. And so no matter what my listeners' lives look like, I know your message has value. And I am so excited because you have helped me feel better by listening to some of the stuff that you've talked about with martyrdom and guilt and invisible workload. And and your whole brand of like outrageous mommy. Like, I just love it all. So I'm glad that you're here. Thank you. And
thank
you. Tell us a little more about who you are and how you got to be doing what you're doing as the outrageous mommy that you are?
Yes. Outrageous is definitely a key word here. So I am, I've been a stay-at-home mom for the past 17 years. Although I am a life coach, I just really, I don't want to say identify as a stay-at-home mom, but that's kind of my, because I'm always here or running somewhere. So, for the past 17 years, so I have a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 10-year-old. So 3 boys and 1 girl. Wow. And so I had my first 3 within 3 years, and I had 2 miscarriages in between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3. So right there, my hormones were really out of whack. And I just remember just laying on the kitchen floor, just crying because I screamed at my 2-year-old daughter for spilling salad dressing on her UGG boots that my mother-in-law just bought her. And just like, what is wrong with me? So I, I just felt so lost. And, I then a little bit after that, I hurt my back really bad. It just had no range of motion. Like, I just was like, I can't move. And so I was in the hospital for a little bit for that. So I think I know I was severely dehydrated, and I wasn't eating. I was just living on coffee and sugar all day. And so I just was lost, and I just lost myself. I didn't know who I was anymore. I really lost my identity. I really missed community so much. I just felt so alone. And so then I went
That's such an
to
awful feeling.
I say that being alone is that, and especially when you constantly have someone near you, someone's constantly touching you, and to feel alone is like, you're never alone, but you feel
Right.
alone,
You feel alone. And then you also feel like you yelling at your daughter with the salad dressing. I'm sure you're feeling like you're the only mom who's ever done that. And
Yeah.
so you're so
Yeah.
bad. So that feels alone too. It's this like
Yeah.
the shame and the secrecy
Yes.
of like, oh, I'm the only mom that feels this way and wants to go hide in a closet and make her kids go away,
Yeah. Yeah. And like,
Yeah.
I should be able to figure this out.
Yeah.
I should be lucky that I'm able to stay home. I should be able
Yeah.
to not scream at her, this
Mm.
beautiful little girl with curls all over her head. Like, how could I yell at
Like, what's
her,
wrong with me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
hate
Like,
that.
what's wrong with me? Yeah. So I went to a MOPS meeting, mothers of preschoolers, and there was a life coach there, and she had us write down our 5-year plan. And I was like, oh my God, I don't even, like, I could be dead in 5 years. I have like, I haven't even thought about that. You know
No,
what I mean?
yeah, right.
So then it really made me think. And then I was just like, you know what? I want to do exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
She just helped me so much, just to like,
Mm,
just write it down and know, like, it's okay if you don't know, but
mm,
just really giving yourself the time to reflect on it, and is really like the first step in regaining your identity, which is how Mommy's life coach started. So my thing
yeah.
was finding the me and Mommy, which is
Mm.
I help moms find themselves again. um so
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
that's how it
Which
started.
is, yeah, which is so it's just having like when I mean this I see so often with my clients too, and with myself that, we're sort of these highly educated women and driven, and then no matter how motherhood comes to us, maybe it is as a stay-at-home mom as it was for you and me, and maybe it's as a working mom, and you're like, no matter what, then there's all this pressure on how to mother right, and how to be that good mom and that good person. And it also, this is where it affects all listeners in terms of like womaning, this like martyrdom, that like we have to do things right, and that there's a right way of doing things, and that I'm doing it, and it's just so interesting. Your podcast episode on martyrs, you read a definition of martyr complex, which you said it's recognized as a psychological pattern of behavior marked by self-sacrifice and service to others at their own expense while ignoring their own needs. And like, I just had to stop the pod. I was like, okay, like, behavior marked by self-sacrifice and service to others at the expense of ourselves. Like, isn't that how we were raised as little girls? Like, isn't that just like in the water we drink? Like, oh, it doesn't matter if you want that crayon, Johnny wants that crayon, or it doesn't matter if, like, so,
Yeah.
I mean, so what do we do?
Yeah. So, we all know that like person who's always like, whether it's a mom or a friend that just always has to tell you how much they're doing. Um, and it's almost like they wear it as a badge. Like, I do all of this, and I think that like you said, we were raised to kind of like strive to be that way. And it nobody wins because
Nobody wins. Yeah.
nobody
I mean,
wins.
you say like a badge, like I feel like I was going after that badge because I feel like in many ways, I had been primed to be like, put your needs aside. And I mean, the word like selfish comes up all the, like, don't be selfish, whether you're, a girl in, 8th grade, or a woman who's 30, but this, like, put your needs aside and take care of others. And then, I find myself as this highly educated woman taking care of kids that I really don't know that much about, even though I have my master's of education. It's like, oh my God, they're crying.
Yeah.
What do I do? Or,
Yeah.
help. And
Right.
I searched for that, like that badge sort of gave me this feeling of worth. Like, look at how busy I am. Look at how, look at how much I'm doing. And,
Yeah.
I've made all the beds today. What have you done? Like that's,
Right.
so I
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
mentality.
Yeah. And just to go back of what you're saying, like we were raised that way. Like so I have 3 boys and a girl, and I still find myself doing it to my daughter.
Mm,
She's our second, and I'll be like, "Oh, well," for example, she had play practice, and
mhm.
my 2 little boys both had a hockey game, and I was like, "I don't know how I'm gonna get you there, Kate." Like, so right away it was like, I
Yeah.
gotta find a ride for her. And she turned to me and she goes, "Well, you know what, Mom? If it were me that had to go and I was a boy and I had to go to hockey, I think you would get me there." And I thought, "Oh my God." I was
Yeah.
like, "You're absolutely right." I was like,
Thank you,
I
daughter.
understand.
Nice
Yes.
lesson.
And I'm glad that you are able to point that out. But I mean, I still do it. Like, all right, Kate, get the dishes. And she's like, like
Yeah.
she'll stop me like, what? There are times when she does it and I'll find myself doing it to her. But yeah, it's like as even young girls, we're
I
almost
mean, we're
society's telling us like you have to be perfect and you
yeah,
have to
and
do
what I
everything.
you have to be everything. And what I like about the conversation and your podcast is this like sort of removing the shame so that we can see more of the truth, like this. I mean, that we
Mm,
were raised that is the conditioning. Like I had all boys, and I did give them dolls because I was like, oh, I wanted to raise these non-gendered, but like
yeah.
they didn't play with the
Right.
dolls, like they
Yeah.
like maybe
Yeah.
for a little bit, but not in the same way, because the whole culture wasn't around like the whole mothering and all. I mean, it's so deep, and I know there have been lots of research on sort of the invisible workload and what we
Mm,
do as women, and us having the best intention sort of going into a relationship, thinking, okay, we're not going to be so gendered, like it's going to be different. But then when you come up against this conditioning of like what makes you a good woman,
mm,
and we've been told so often what makes you a good woman is that you have a man by your side. I mean,
mhm.
literally, it's that like
Right.
that, let's breed women for men. And then also what makes
Mhm.
you a good mom, our definition,
Mhm.
a good mom has a very different definition than a good dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where that sort of, I think, the martyrdom comes from.
Yeah.
Um, of that, like ignoring our needs and putting other people's needs above us, which also I have to say, to be fair, like we needed to do that when our kids were young. Like we couldn't
Mhm.
be like, actually, I'm going to take a bath instead of nurse you. Like you could
Yeah.
just start,
Right. Yeah. No, right. But right, I mean, like, I was getting like urinary tract infections because I wasn't going to the bathroom.
right,
Like that's not okay. You know what I
right.
mean? So
Yeah.
that's where it was like, yeah, I understand you're working and, thank God you are, but um yeah, that's when it's like, okay, find your help. I'll say that to my mom's like, let go
Mm,
and let someone help you. I think
right.
that is a lot of with women because, um, like, well, if I don't do it, no one's going to do it. It'll get
Yeah.
done. It's not going to get done maybe the way that you would do it or the way
Mm,
that you 100% want it to be done,
yeah.
you can delegate and you can let go. I think like just, letting go a little bit of the control, I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
because
and that's where like it has to come with that understanding that we're controlling because we're feeling like it's part of our, like you mentioned identity before, it's
yeah.
like this worth, or like our grading scale. Like how are we
Yes.
being, measured if we're not
Yes.
putting the dinner on the table? And it's some of that for women, it's coming back and defining for yourself what it
Yeah.
means to be a good woman or a good man.
Yes.
Um,
And I will say a lot of times, like we look at our kids as like our report cards as
mm,
parents, like
mhm.
like your kids like freaking out. Do you guys you have Target in Australia, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, like your kid's
Freaking out at
freaking out
Target.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and you think, "Oh my God, I look like a bad mom.
Mm-hmm.
My kid's freaking out. Like I get a, I get a D for today
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
my 2-year-old sees 100 toys and can't have one. Like, of course he's gonna freak out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And he wants the hot dog and the Starbucks and,
Right. Which is so
so yeah.
challenging. And that's, I mean, that's when, and this is why I love, the podcast that we do. And this, my show
Mhm.
is called the Love Your Life Show, that it really
Yeah.
is about switching from that external view of how we feel about ourselves, like what other people are thinking, like what that lady is
Mhm.
saying at Target, or what the other mom is doing on the playground, or, because
Mhm.
that's, and switching more to an internal. Like, am I
Yes.
being a good mom in this moment? Me letting my child have a fit on the floor of Target is something we're working on, and I'm just going to sit near them and hold, or me
Right.
holding my screaming child forcibly as we leave and getting the
Yeah.
looks. Like, is that something that I'm feeling good about? Like, let me do me,
Yeah.
but returning
Right.
back inwards. And that is so important. In terms of mothering, that am I a good mom? I know that we often look externally. We look at what our kids are doing. Like, are we a good mom? And we hear this, like, I'll watch moms, like you hear of some kid who dropped out and they're like in a drug rehab program, and they're like, oh, and they're sort of like looking at the mom. It's like, I have 5 boys. Like, they are all very different. I can be a certain way, but there are other forces in the world that influence
Sure.
these boys. And so when we're
Yeah.
using our kids as a report card, it's not only not helpful for them, it puts a
Mm.
lot of pressure on them, because we're doing more of that
Yeah.
control. Like, did you try out
Yes.
for this team? Did you do that? But it also puts an
Mhm.
incredible amount of control, pressure on us, where
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, that's like middle school, whoever, the girl or boy going to school in their sweatshirt that is dirty with spaghetti, but they don't want to change it. And you have chosen, as a mom, looking internally, you're like, that battle's not worth it for me to fight.
Yeah.
We let go of what the
Right.
teachers and the other parents are going to think when
Yes.
they see our
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah. Yeah. So many I say, I do a lot with mom rage and why you're
Mm,
yelling and screaming and everything. And a lot of that comes from um number one, judgment, and especially judgment from other moms.
yeah,
Um, because like, like if you look to that one mom who's like looks like she's got it all together, because there's always one, right?
yeah,
And then she looks down on you, it's like, oh, like just, you feel
yeah.
horrible. But I do say as a tip, as long as you know your values, which
Mm,
is another thing that moms don't really sit and think about, like, what are
mm,
my values? You're just so busy doing and
right.
going and, knowing your values is able for you to kind of sit in your boundaries, make your decisions with your
Hmm.
kids and you know, and kind of look at and I don't want to mean it like judging the other mom, but taking a
Hmm.
step back and saying there's something maybe that they're working on. Like,
Hmm.
like your mom would always say, oh, they're just jealous. Like, I don't mean it that way,
Right.
but when
Yeah.
you're able to switch the perspective, you're able to, and look more, these are my values. I value authenticity. So guess what? We aren't gonna wear our beautiful outfit today because we don't
Yeah.
feel that great today,
Right. Yeah.
We like sweatpants and sweatshirts. So,
Well, and I love
yeah.
that. So, so much of what we do is look at, not just as mothers, but sort of society. We like look at kids' development. Like, we know that, a 2-year-old is different than an 8-year-old, is different than a 12-year-old, is different but then we sort of stop at like really age 20 to 25. And we're like fully cooked. But what I have been digging into is, it came up in like the very end of my graduate program with adult behavior and development. They just like sort of touched on it like in a couple classes, and I was like, let me look into it. And so, sort of a lot of the listeners and my own stage of development right now is this stage of getting out of black or white or all or nothing thinking, that like
Mhm.
my way is the right way, which I find incredibly helpful for those moments on the playground, or the moments, with my kids, and I'm trying to parent my kids, like me thinking that my way is the right way. So I see this other mom and she's all dressed up, and I might feel like judgment is sort of that trigger. And it's that like, okay, I might feel judgy. And it's like, okay, well, like, where might I have some flexible thinking here? Like, what's my stage? Like, what can I learn about this? Maybe that's right for her to wear the taffeta and the pearls, and like, why am I sitting here like, oh my God, she said, it's like, close your mouth. Breathe,
Right.
or like, maybe it's right for that family to watch TV during dinner, or maybe it's right for that family to buy all their kids the newest iPhone. Like that sort of rigidity in our brains, just, it doesn't feel good to us, but it's also not helpful sort of for all the women out there. It's like, we're all trying to do the best we can.
We are, like, give us all a break, like, literally, we are. We're all trying to do the best.
I really like, I like that sort of like, okay, well, that maybe isn't what I'm choosing, but maybe that's what's right for them. It sort of gives me some freedom, which I didn't have as a younger Susie, or a younger, woman in my development. It was very much like I had to come down hard on like, breastfeeding is right or wrong, or having a TV in your room is right or wrong. And now I'm just pushing listeners to sort of expand to that level of, when we feel judgment of other women or other mothers or other people, to sort of sit back and look at what it's trying to teach us. In a helpful way.
I love that.
Well, so you mentioned like in terms of martyrdom and like feeling like it's all on us, and you mentioned like that you coach your women to get specific, like to let go and to let go of control. Can we talk a little bit about that? Like what that would look like? If they're thinking like, oh my God, and I cook all the meals and I do all the work in the kitchen, or, I'm the only one that's doing, like, what could they do?
So, a couple tips. One is, like you said, be specific. So, and I have a perfect example. I am also in grad school right now. And so every Thursday from 4:30, thank you, 4:30 to 7:30, I am in class. So my husband says, he's here, so I can't be too loud, but he says, I got it, babe. I'm going to support you. I'm going to support you. Okay. So you got the kids from 4:30 to 7:30 now. And then the invisible load, like, will also come back on this, but, what I needed to probably say was, what I need for you is, number one, to figure out dinner, because that's dinner time. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's Chick-fil-A. I don't care. But, number one, I need you to get dinner. Number two, I need you to figure out who has like when Katie, who's picking up Katie from dance. If it's not you, that's fine. But I don't need to think about anything that's going on from 4:30 to 7:30. So I wasn't very specific, and it caused a lot.
Of course.
Because I didn't say, like, he was just like, yeah, I got it. And then I'm like, well, okay, it's Thursday and I'm
still a
picking
dance.
someone up. Like that means supporting me, not saying, like actually doing it. So being specific, and letting go is so huge. Like, that's so hard. And lowering expectations, not only of everyone around you, but most importantly, yourself. I mean, we set the bar, like you said, as women so high that it's like, it's not possible. I mean, have hopes and dreams. And I don't mean like, lower
There's
your
a very
dreams or
big
anything like
difference
that.
between
Like strive to do your best, but letting go and letting lowering expectations not only helps with getting along with everybody, but it also stops your it's I don't want to say stops, but lessens disappointment. And disappointment, like you said, is just like we were talking about earlier, it's just being alone and being disappointed are two really hard feelings to sit with.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and it's so funny because I, have a background in positive psychology, and one of my big things I'm always telling people is lower your expectations. Like, it seems completely hypocritical, but it's like the more reasonable your expectations are, the less
Right.
like of a gap there is. Christine Hassler wrote a great book called Expectation Hangover, where like we expect like, okay, he, by me just saying that he'll handle it, like I'll come home and the kids will all be in their PJs and all, and
Yeah.
it's like, no. So
Yeah.
what I like hearing there, and one of the things that I say, like my favorite tools is CCC, clear, concise communication. It's this like, I'm going to be doing grad school. And what I think is missing sometimes as women, when we ask for help, first of all, it's hard enough for us to ask for help. So sometimes us, like, that's okay if that's the only thing we can do, and then we'll learn from it. But it's like trying to open our mouth, say, yes, could you do dinner on Friday? But then where we get into trouble is we have this assumption that they know what that means. Even if you had said, can you do dinner? You're like doing 4:30 to 7:30, whereas you've been doing it for 17 years. Or, I'm 51. I've sort of been watching people do, my mom, like you said with your daughter, like my mom's like, hey, can you chop the onions? Can you, like, I have a greater understanding of what that means going into, handling an evening. And when we're making the assumption that they know, like that someone could just jump into our shoes and do it like us, it sets up for a whole bunch of drama and is unfair. It's, it's unfair, whether it's your husband or whether it's your kid, this comes up too. Like, can you do the laundry? And then they like bleach everything. And you're like, how don't you know? They're like, because I wasn't loaded with that information. Someone has to tell me.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then like, I do fall in this pattern where I'm like, you know what? I'll just do it myself. Here comes the martyrdom. I'll just do it myself, because by the time I tell you, it's going to take me forever. Yeah.
It does take longer, but that's why I keep encouraging people, because it's like the short-term harm of being like, here, you know what, could you do like dinner? And what I mean by that is like, can you, I'll be shopping Monday. So can you figure out what we're doing for dinner Wednesday and like put it on the shopping list? I'll get it, if that's what you're going to do. And then I want you to prepare and put it all away. Like, and then, like, so it's very
putting
specific.
it away.
Putting it away. And it's but that, and so that does take time. And I know like people are so overworked because we have the whole invisible workload, but the way to get out of it is we have to take the time. It is, with whatever it is. I know, as a business owner, I'm often like, oh, I want someone to come in and, run my podcast editing. And I'm like, right. But then I'm going to have to sit and tell them like, do, these 10 steps. So I just am still doing it. And then I've told myself I can't complain about it anymore. So I'm like, if you are not willing to take that time to sit down and show someone how to do it, well, then you get to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And at some point, I imagine it's going to get to a point where I'm like, I'm going to have someone, I'm going to sit down and do it. But it's sort of that medical model. I had Julie Lithcott-Hames, the author of How to Raise an Adult, on the show. And she was talking about, for kids, but I think it goes for everyone, whether it's your spouse, whether it's whoever, like you're trying to help. Someone asks you if you can, if they can help you. First, you're doing it all. Second, you do it with them. And then third, they do it on their own. But we sort of skip that middle part of explaining, because it, like, we just want, an ideal world. Like, I'm pretty sure if I told you like, hey, Sue, can you do, dinner for me when, like, can you take care of the kids Wednesday 4 to 7:30, like you would do.
Like, okay, definitely dinner's in there somewhere.
And you actually would be at Chick-fil-A. You'd be like, we have roasted chicken with it. And I'm like, oh, great.
Yeah.
But I think the point is sort of patience. I still want like perseverance for women, like stay with it. Just because you came home at 7:30 and your husband's in front of the TV and all the kids are on their devices, no one's been fed, and your daughter's still at dance, doesn't mean that's a failure. It doesn't mean you get to that part where you're like, all right, screw it, I'll do it, because that doesn't change anything.
Yes.
Yeah. It's sort of engaging in that conversation, like, hey, what's happening here?
Yeah. We did have a second conversation after I calmed down, but and I was like, so when I take my summer classes, this is what this means, so Yeah.
Well, and it's only fair. Like if he asked you like, hey, can you handle, I don't know what he does, but say he,
Mhm.
manages people, can you handle my morning
Yeah.
at work 9 to
Yeah.
11? And you go in and you're just like, I'm handling it,
Yeah. Yeah.
He's
Oh
gonna be
my
like,
God.
wait, right. Like you
I,
didn't check the time clock and you didn't do
yeah.
this and you didn't. So it's just, we like make this, it's really a catch 22 because as women, part of what gives us so much stress is that the stuff we're doing, we're telling ourselves isn't that hard, like the making the beds, the doing the dishes. Someone asks what we did during the day, we might be like, nothing. And I'm always there to be like, no, own it. Like I did a lot.
Yeah.
I kept like 3 people
Yeah.
alive and I got 3 people to school and back. I fed them, the house didn't burn down, but I think
Yeah.
in that thinking we're not doing a lot, then we think someone can just step in and what the hell's wrong with
Yes.
them that they
Yeah.
aren't, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I do think a lot of, like you said, I don't know whether it's society or what we tell ourselves, but as women, we're kind of always we're taught, because we're around the same age, like,
mm,
to not numb our feelings, but like, don't tell that person you're upset.
right.
So then we stop to think like, yeah, you're right. I didn't do anything today. Like always kind of dumb
Yeah,
it down. Like, yeah, no, it was no big deal because you don't want to be too much
right,
and you don't want to be too little. You have to be just right. So
right.
yeah, we just are constantly telling ourselves like, um, no, you're not upset about that. Oh no, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
So
why I think sometimes that's why like that pressure valve builds on the martyrdom. Like that we almost have to keep
mhm.
loading it on to get that, like to be like, I was so busy. Let me tell you, like I went to, 16 stores. I went to Trader
Yeah.
Joe's, Target, came like it's like, look at
Yeah.
me, instead of
Yeah.
just saying, like, you know what, I like organized the house and listened to a kid today.
Yeah.
That's pretty darn good. I didn't
Yeah.
yell,
Yeah.
but
It's huge. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's the pressure that we're putting on. So I
Mhm.
love your feedback. So asking
Mhm.
for help, letting people help us, like letting it
Mhm.
be imperfect, because we were not
Yes.
perfect when we started.
Mhm.
Yeah, the specific, I also, like you mentioned, like stop volunteering for things you don't want to do. Could you say a little
Yes,
more about that?
because it just completely, causes resentment. Like I had this one uh face or Instagram post and it was like my son's lacrosse team and I signed up for like of course I signed up too late at the Sign
Yeah.
Up Genius. So nothing, the ice was
Right.
gone
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and the
I'm like, I
paper
can cut
products.
watermelon, right?
Yeah. So then I'm like, "Oh, I'll make, the salad," and it had to be like a homemade salad, and I just was like, "I know why I did this." It was because I didn't know any of these moms, and
Mm,
I'm kinda known for my salad, so I was like,
yeah.
"I'm gonna make this salad," and I was so pissed off that I was making the salad, you know what I mean? It was like Saturday morning, I'm like,
Yes.
"I could be, like, walking in the park right now." It was a beautiful, like, spring morning,
Mm.
but instead I'm like, chopping onions
Shop it,
and
right.
and I'm just like,
Yeah. And then I
yeah,
imagine, right. And then you're feeling like you're doing it for whichever kid and he's like, I
yeah,
never asked you to do this. Like,
yeah.
so he comes
He's like,
in, can you help
yeah,
me with my whatever? No, because I'm making the salad. He's like,
yeah, right. Yeah. He's like, "I don't even like that salad." Right. And
I'm
then I'm
like,
like, "Oh, now everyone's gonna like me because of my salad."
yes.
Like, "No, they're not." Like, they don't
Why do
care.
we do the
Huh?
things that it
I
has to be
know.
a homemade salad? Like,
I know. Oh my gosh. So then when I posted it, one of the lacrosse moms wrote, "Well, if it's any consolation, all the boys said your salad was banging." I was like, "All right, well,
it is a
maybe it was
compilation.
worth it."
Thank you very much. That is helpful. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your insight and expertise here
Mhm.
because it is this like sort of stepping out of it. It is outrageous, stepping out of the rules that we're putting on ourselves of what it means to be a good woman and a good mom
Mhm.
and this sort of busyness and slowing things down and maybe you
Mhm.
don't sign up for the sign up genius at all. Like what would happen?
No one would even
Yes,
know. Yeah.
right. It's like there's
Right.
no salad. People just walk by
Yeah.
that blank
Yeah.
spot. So
Yeah.
I find it so important to really pay attention to this, sort of our martyr behavior or the doing it all for so many reasons. One of them is if you are a parent, like the modeling with our kids that being a stressed, busy, sort of fried mom is not really what I want my kids to think. Like I want them to see me like loving them and lit up and a little bit of a different legacy there, but
Yeah.
also what you're speaking about with this like resentment and if people are in a marriage like that, resentment is like a black ooze that's going to get in there.
Yeah.
But it also feeds resentment in any relationship where you're sort of overdoing to get that like the martyr
Yeah.
of the year
To
award.
get that coin that, and resentment is like a cornerstone of shame. It also breeds a lot of mom rage. And it really breeds burnout. I
Yeah.
mean, so many burnout moms are resentful, like I had this one client and she just was just in her marriage, she was doing a lot and she just was saying like, what kind of woman would feel this way and what kind of woman would not even want to sit next to her husband, and I was like, a resentful woman, someone who's
Yeah.
resentful.
Oh, she
And
was
it
saying that
takes
about herself.
about herself, like, what's
Oh,
wrong with me? Like
yeah,
he
that
wants to make this
shame.
work, and I right now I
I
don't want
don't,
to,
right.
and it's because you're
Yeah,
resentful. Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's hard to peel resent. It's not, it can happen, but
right.
it's definitely a layer that has to be pulled because
Yeah.
um yeah, I find a lot of times with moms with mom rage, anger is a second emotion, and it's usually masking three feelings that are sadness, grief, and I don't mean like grief of a loved one, just like a loss of something,
Mm,
and fear. So a lot of
mm,
times, like it feels more powerful and more controlling to yell because you don't want to sit and say like, you know what, it really makes me feel insecure, inadequate, rejected
mm.
when you don't like the turkey stew that I just made
Right.
tonight. Like, you're not gonna sit
Yeah,
there and say that, you know
yeah.
what I mean? And it's okay if you do,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a more powerful feeling. It's something that you, is it's
Right. It's
easier
like
to feel. It's
explosive.
easier to
Yeah,
feel that. Yeah.
yeah. I'm really very and all of that again, like it just sort of comes back to your advice in speaking up and asking for what we need. Like resentment, I always say the antidote to resentment is a request. Like we need to make a request. Sometimes it's
Mm,
really far along, but like at any point, it's like, where are we feeling resentful and where can
mm,
we make a request? Also with the anger, the sadness, or I love that you point out it's a secondary emotion. Like, where am I feeling
mhm.
sad? Sad, maybe that you didn't communicate well with your husband, and so it
Yeah.
went down the way it went down. And
Yeah.
instead, we yell because that's easier than saying, like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm just disappointed. I have all this. I thought this was I thought you could read my mind. I thought you were
Yes.
a magician.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. That is another thing, like, it takes a lot to, and once I realized it, I was like, "Wow," but, like, "Wow, you really can't read my mind."
yeah,
Like,
isn't that
that's a
crazy?
why did I ever think that you could, you
Yes.
know? And
Yeah.
nobody can read anybody's mind, So,
No.
like I say for Mother's Day, you know, be specific, like, tell them what you want. I
Mm,
mean, like a lot of people want to know what is it. They don't want to do this guessing game, like you said,
mm-mm,
like, communicate clear. Yeah, I want not to do dinner. I don't want to call for the
mm-hmm.
pizza to come. I don't want to go meet the guy at the
Yeah.
door and
Right.
pay for the pizza, and I don't want to clean up after.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, the after is
It
always.
it's the after, but it's also, it's like, it's like staying on your side of the street, but speaking up enough. Because again, like the example you gave, you know, with your husband, like the Wednesday night, you know, we get to say whatever, like the more details, the better. So what I mean by this is like making sure that our daughter's picked up by dance, making sure that dinner, like you plan it, you make it, you clean it up, and, you know, maybe that's it. Or making sure that Joey did his math tutor, you know, got to his math tutor and thing. Like you saying that, your husband might be like, wow, she's like anal, but we let him have his thoughts. Like, you know, and it's just like, it's better to say it, get it out. He might think you're anal. That is okay. He might be like, wow, okay, here she is. She's that, you know, but we're going to let her be her. And then we see, like, then we can move forward, and him, you know, him being like, yeah, well, I did do the dinner. And that's where we can let go of some of the control that, you know, you're thinking it might be a roast chicken and he does Chick-fil-A, and that's okay. It got done. Okay. It's that like getting it done, they're not us. So
no, they're
Thank
not.
you, Sue. Awesome. I know. Where can listeners find you or work with you or engage with you?
So I have a podcast, The Outrageous Mommy. I also have, you can follow me on my Instagram at Mommy's Life Coach, like all one word. And my website, Mommy's Life Coach, you can click on contact and you can set up for a free discovery call where we can talk about what's going on and
where you're feeling resentful, right? Exactly. Getting you out of the martyrdom. So awesome. Well, all those links I will have in the show notes. It'll be at smbwell.com/243. And so listeners find and follow her on Instagram and let her know what your big takeaway was from this message. So thank you, Sue.
Awesome. Thank you, Susie. This was great.
Thank you.